Okay, the stream is started. Let me just see if I've got the link for this. I can get it to you straight away. Well, I guess if you just go to my channel, when you guys go to my channel, does it show the live right away and you can just jump into it and go? Yeah, you have to refresh it. Right. Okay, so it is going. Actually, I actually have the same problem right now. What you guys cannot see, just off screen, is that if you guys want a plan view, here's a plan view of a cat. There you go, plan view of a cat right there. Okay, so drafting is canceled. The cat is sitting on my paper. Well, there we go. Slight impediment to today's productivity. Well, it's pretty wet out. She actually, I think she's enjoying listening to the rain too. But sorry, kitty, this is not a place for catto. Yeah, I could. That's right. Yeah. Hey guys, look at my cat-shaped steel container. It's amazing. Okay. We we were able. There was a couple students who had to bring their dogs to school. They were because their dogs had been to some sort of a veterinary appointment, and they had to keep them under observation because of the medication that they were using. So we had a couple of dogs in the classroom 2 years ago, which I thought was spectacular. We made sure that none of the students were, going to have a problem with that. Some folks are afraid of dogs. These were pretty chill dogs and not, anything that you'd normally be super afraid of. Okay, so here we are. Now we're going to get this laid out. So I'm zoomed out a little bit far here, so you're not going to be getting the details on this stuff yet, because you shouldn't really need them. So we're working with the 1/4 inch to a foot scale. So here we are. So if we look at the length of our containers, there's 40 feet right there. So the length, of course, it's not going to be a problem to set that up. It's going to be once we get into the vertical dimension here. So now you'll see there's 0, there's 40. So really we only have like 1/2 inch on each side of the page in terms of clearance between the plan and the end of the sheet. So this is going to be your limiting factor when you lay this thing out. So what you really need to do is, just sit down with a piece of sketch paper, or what you can even do is you can work at a smaller scale. Like here's my 1/8 inch to a foot scale. And so I could go, hey, you know what? I'm going to just kind of figure out, how I want this thing to look. And I kind of mentioned that we've got that 25-foot maximum cantilever. So let's just look at how that might pan out. So here I'm at 0. I'm not going to quite make it to 25 because I wasn't thinking about where I was at here, but we can kind of say, well, okay, there's 25, there's 0. And let me go back to 15 here because we've got a 40-foot long. So, we can kind of look at the proportions of a 25-foot cantilever and just kind of go, is that kind of what I'm after here? Or do I want something that's, a little bit more centered? And so this is a sketching process where you can just kind of sketch out some concepts for, what this thing's going to look like. And you can also look at whether you want. So when I'm looking at the cantilever here, I'm just doing a little concept sketch here. If I want this thing to be like super cantilevered like this, so there's my glass end here, and then I've got my my different glass walls up above, and just decide, you know, what look am I most happy with here with my, and then there's our tubes, which are going to come down and hold this thing in place. So from a structural engineering perspective, this would be, you know, definitely getting towards the edge of things. In real life, probably the structural engineer would just ask for one post at least that's sitting down there and supporting that end, even at the, you know, 25-foot cantilever mark. So
Yes.
yeah,
So if we have a huge cantilever like that, do we have to put a post in at the small end?
no,
Or no, I would assume not.
that's right. So once if you put a post in, even one at the end of your long cantilever, that would negate the need. You just need posts at one end to help stabilize the thing. And in the brief, it shows two posts, but if you want to make it one, um, that would be fine too. So you've got a little bit of design freedom here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start just laying out my sheet. So I'm going to go for, yeah, hello cat. Yes, I'm pleased that you're here too. You're now in the way. Yeah. You're funny. But no, we do not chew on the instructor's hands. No.
Oh, his fur is, or her fur is actually really nice.
Yeah, she's what do they call it? A tortoise shell. So this particular flavor of cat, they're not super friendly. They're kind of more of an aloof kind of a critter. And I'm not really sort of a cat person. I don't really know much about cats. We just got the cat to kill vermin. So yeah, it's kind of a funny creature. Okay, now try and stay off the drafting board, please. Okay. Um, so I'm going to do the 25-foot cantilever. So I'm going to show you just here how we'd sort of lay this out. So 40 feet, if I have a couple of inches of white space on each side of the paper, I'm going to be fine. So I'm just going to use that as my 0. And then, oh, no, maybe I want to be a little bit closer to the right. So if possible, you would prefer to have more white space on the left-hand side because of the binding edge. So in architectural drawings, if you have multiple sheets, the left edge is used for binding. And so we kind of tend to want to have all the drawings closer to the right edge. So I'm just going to try and have a couple inches here. And this is going to be how I'm going to lay things out. Don't forget, you need to have room for your title block in the bottom right-hand corner. So hopefully the rain at its heaviest wasn't too much of a distraction for you guys.
Hey Wes,
Yeah,
what scale are you using?
1/4 inch to a foot. So right there, you folks can see 1/4 inch to a foot. So there's my 0 mark, 2 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet, and then right up to 40 feet there. Okay, so I want to make sure that I've got my 0 and my 40 noted on the sheet. So I'm going to try and keep more or less centered on the sheet. So I'm just marking off my 0 and 40. Now, this is my ground floor plan. So this is just going to be to help me lay things out. But also, don't forget, we've got our overall dimensions of this thing, which we need to keep in mind. And so that was 8'2". So we're going to come back and draw dashed lines for the overhead of this. And I'll get to that in a not too distant future here. So here I'm measuring off 8'2" because this is going to be my width of my unit above. I was just wondering which one of these set squares was actually taller, but they're both about the same. So here I can't quite make it all the way across, so I've got to move the whole business up a bit here just to keep going with the lines and to get it over to the other side of the sheet. Okay, so there's the upper unit laid out. So now I'm going to lay out the lower part of the unit here. So I'm going to do a 25-foot cantilever, the maximum one. So there's 25 feet there. And then I'm going to measure for 8'2". So there's my 0 mark. So I move it up another couple of inches there. There's my 8'2" mark. And there is 8, or 8'2" rather. Just throw a couple construction lines out there. Okay. So this kind of helps us sort out the plan for getting our design, the plan component of our design, worked out onto our lower floor plan and our upper floor plan. Now, one of the problems here straight away is I can tell you folks that by the time you get a 9-foot long bedroom here onto the upper floor, so there's the end of our bedroom, it means that I won't be able to have the washroom right against the bedroom because I'd have no way to get access out onto the deck. So it is going to mean that I'm going to have to move my washroom over here and put it up, gang it up against the washroom for the ensuite. And there's some certain deficiencies that are there because then you're keeping your plumbing together. So it's not a bad thing. So here you can see with this cantilever, um, you're definitely going to be looking at having to put a post out at the end. And that's totally cool too, right? So you've still got this great big overhang, but now it does make sense to support it at the end. You don't just actually have to use a post either here. I'll show you folks just some sketch ideas here. So when we are, now this will be something that you'd be looking at in your south elevation. So you'll have the upper part of your unit sitting here and then the lower unit down below. So yes, you could just draw a single post coming down, like so. You could also make the post so that it's got a bit of a flare at the bottom of it there. That could be fabricated in steel. The other thing that they could do instead of a pipe or a square tube, so if you were to look downwards at that tube shape, it could be a circular tube, it could be a square or rectangular tube. It could also be an I-beam. So if you were to look at this thing, you'd see the two flanges sticking out at you. That's pretty small here. Let me zoom in on this. There we go. So that might make it a little easier to see there. So yeah, you don't have to be using any of these shapes. When you draw it in plan, you'd also indicate what it is, whether it's a circle, a square, or a rectangle, or an I-beam. And then when you draw in elevation, there's certain things that you could do. You could put the bottom of your support. So remember that the bottom of our unit is sitting on the ground. But the post, when it comes down, it can also sit on a piece of concrete on its own little pedestal. And then we could have 2 columns that come up to support our upper floor. And those columns could be any one of these shapes. So feel free to do something a little bit funky here in terms of how you're supporting the end of that. So if you're looking at an elevation looking in this direction, of course you'll just see one of these things sitting here, or you could make them so that these 2 pipes don't even line up, so that they could actually be staggered. So if you're looking down on the end of this, in plan down on the end of this thing, you'd have one pipe that's kind of supporting there and one pipe that's supporting there, and both of these are coming down and landing on that concrete pedestal like you can see here, right? So this is looking at it in plan. And so if we were looking at it from our west elevation, you'd see something like this. The one column is angling over and the other one's coming down and then landing on the concrete pedestal, right? So that's all kinds of neat stuff that you can do just to play around with the end support on this thing. So those are some concepts that we can use. All right, so I'm going to yank the cat. Everything's so damp now that the wood just doesn't want to allow me to move this thing up and down. But of course, come Friday, this thing will be retired because we go back to the computer for the rest of the course. Unfortunately, there will be some hand sketch components of it, but yeah, that's where we go from here. Okay, so now I've got my 8'2" out to out, and so now I'm going to start laying out my exterior walls for the lower floor. So those are going to be at 6 inches. So lay those out, just some construction lines. And then what you folks will need to do is just very faintly lay out your walls. So that once you get your doors in and you've decided on the sizing of your rooms. So for the washroom, we're going to have just a single wash basin and a toilet. Now, for the dimensions of the toilets and in terms of how we draw them, some of you might actually have a symbol template that actually has the shape of the toilet on the template. Those things used to exist and they were super handy. You just stick your pencil in there and trace it out and you were done. But what we can do here for showing our toilet is just draw a very basic symbol using the rectangle. And I'll get you guys the dimensions of these just in a moment here because I can't remember them off the top of my head. And then we would draw a circle in front of it, just like that. A rectangle and then a circle. Here, I'll do it in pen. That's all that is needed. And I'll get you the exact dimensions for that. And everybody would look at that and go, hey, you know, rectangle and circle, that's a toilet. And then right next to it, we would show our a cabinet and then a sink inside it. Now these dimensions I actually know. Sink you can draw as 16-inch in diameter. And then our cabinetry that's on top of it, 22 inches deep. And then this on the side here, depending on how much space you want to use, increments of 6 inches. So 30 or 36 inches. Those are kind of typical widths for the sink unit. So I'll get you guys the dimensions on the toilet in just a second. One thing I do remember from the toilet is that the clear space along the wall, so let me just switch colors here. The clear space along the wall that you need behind the toilet, so this is clear space on the wall, is 30 inches. So at the very least, you need 30 and 30, that's 60 inches. So that's 5 feet, 5 feet of clear space, you know, for the smallest of all possible washrooms. And the reason that we actually have to do it this way, now I'm sure you folks have been in washrooms where the toilet and the sink face each other. So I'm sure you've seen a situation like this where you've got your sink and your toilet, and they're facing each other. Often they have a pocket door for getting into that washroom. We can't do that here because after we've got our hallway depth in here, um, we wouldn't be able to do this. Now you could, if you wanted, you could turn your washroom sideways and put that in your plan. So if you wanted to put your washroom so that they were facing each other, that would be fine. But these always feel very cramped. So to at least give the washroom a sense of space, I would suggest this layout for your washroom here where you come into the unit on the ground floor. Now I've got the washroom right at the end. If you want to put the washroom closer to the living area, you can, but typically for privacy reasons, you put the washroom as far away um, from your living area. And then your utility room, which will have your a washer and dryer in it, and that will be the next room. And then you can start laying out the next rooms after that.
So, Wes, the washroom is good. Like the one you're suggesting is 5 feet by 5 feet.
It's going to be 5 feet by whatever is left over by the time we provide our hallway width. So let me just lay that out here on the sheet. So I've got my 6-inch wall, and then we're aiming to try and have 3 feet of space for a hallway, just so it doesn't feel too super cramped. So there's those marks laid out here. Hopefully you folks can see them on YouTube here. I'll just draw some parallel lines here so we can see them on the sheet, and I'll try and make them dark enough so that it's clear for you folks who are thinking about the layout. So there's my 6-inch outside wall. Here's the other side of the corridor that I'm after. So there's a 3-foot corridor, and now I'm going to do the 3-inch width of the interior walls. Now if you've got a 1/4-inch ruler, you can see I've got 0, and then in the next big tick is a 3-inch. So that kind of helps for laying out those interior walls, because you just have to get to that sort of big tick there, and there's our 3-inch wall. So by the time I get my 6-inch wall on the other side here, I've already got the marker on the paper here. This is going to tell us what our remainder is for our washroom. And in this case, it looks like we are going to have about 3'9" or 3'10". Looks like 3'9". So the constraints of the dimensions of this thing are kind of what's going to drive how this is going to pan out. So yeah, 3'9" times your 5-foot width for the washroom. So that's kind of how you can start laying things out. So for your ground floor plan, once you've kind of figured out the arrangement and kind of begin just sketching out where you're thinking that you're going to place the interior layout. And so maybe you just want to sketch that out on a separate piece of paper before you commit to getting those lines down. And begin to think about the layout of stuff before you go through into the next part of the process. Okay. Oh wow, this is didn't have the drawing lined up with the camera very nicely at all. Oh no, that's because my phone has been bumped. There we go. Yeah, go ahead. Yes, probably 2 lab days to be honest. I think tomorrow will be a lab day, and Friday will be a lab day, I'm sure, to get this all laid out. Because I want you guys to enjoy this. This is an experience to savor because you will be doing lots of sketch plans as designers in the future. Well, you'll be sketching on trace paper, but very rarely where you will be doing something that is to scale, where you're actually doing a technical drawing like this. This is something that you're actually going to want to keep as a keepsake. Um, I'm not kidding. Just because everything's gone computerized, and I'm a big fan of the computer, and that's one of the reasons that they actually got me hired is because I know all the new technologies that are being used in architecture, and they really wanted someone who could teach these new students those technologies. But there's a big part of me that has this nostalgia for the way things were done, though I'd never want to go back, but also because it develops your hand and because this is something that came off the tips of your fingers. This is truly yours. If somebody looks at this, they would be able to look at the handwriting. They'd even be able to look at the way the lines are put down on the paper. And so, I could go look at somebody's desk and with a pretty good probability be able to identify who the drafter was, even without looking at the text. So there's a very personal aspect of this is art. This is part of the art of architecture, but it's a technical art. So um, whereas some people might debate the value of some or many forms of art in terms of their practicality, very few people would debate the usefulness of this. This is something that's going to be built. So these are technical instructions, but there's also an artistic component to this as well. So it is a wonderful thing. So
So,
uh,
Wes, would you say we should kind of spend a bit of time on the design aspect and the layout and stuff like that to make it
yes.
make it not as generic and kind of make our own? Because I've got some pretty sweet ideas here already.
Yeah, so folks, just for the record here for the YouTube stream, putting your own signature on this in terms of its design takes some time to do so here. So you've got a general arrangement. You can just rock with that if you want to. You can think about some of the changes that you might want to make, but as you get into laying out these plans, there are some basic constraints here, just dimensionally, for the width of the unit that you will need to observe. And keep me posted. Ask questions in a Discord chat with regards to what you could or could not do. And then feel free just to take a picture of one of your plans and you can ship it to me in a direct message or stick it in the ADT1 channel, whatever. But if you want to kind of keep this a bit of a surprise for the other students, because what I'm going to do once this is done, with your permission, if I've got really good pictures of this stuff, I'm going to put these pictures back into the ADT1 channel so we can all look at each other's work
That'd be
and
sweet.
and draw this up. So last year I also did a submission and we all had them sitting up on the drafting boards. But this year, because I'm having to mark all of your assignments on Blackboard, which takes way longer than marking them by hand, just by getting access, reviewing, all that stuff, I have to focus on getting your marks done. So I'm not going to be able to do submission. I actually probably will have time to do the isometric, which we haven't even talked about yet, and we'll talk about that. Um, Probably, what are we at here? We're at Wednesday. Yeah, we'll talk about that first thing tomorrow morning because that will take you a bit of time because we're going to do the isometric on this thing. And getting that to fit on the sheet is going to be really tricky. Some of you might even have to flip to a different scale to do the isometric. So we'll talk about laying that out tomorrow morning. So for now, get the tunes on, get the coffee perking, and start thinking about how you want this lay this thing out. So I'll put the stream link for this just so you guys can see the layout on the sheet, and I'll get you guys the dimensions for um, toilets and other stuff uh, coming up. Now I will talk about some of the dimensions of things that we do know about, and that's beds and cabinets.
Hey Wes,
Yeah.
do we have to do it with the big cantilever like the T shape?
No, you could do it L shaped, right?
Okay, like
The only problem with that is just keep in mind where your circulation is going to come down in the ground floor. So you just have to move your plan around on the ground floor to facilitate that. But yes, a plus sign would be totally cool. Are there any other concepts? Yeah, the only one that I'm going to try and get you folks to get away from, just because it's a little bit less um, dramatic, is stacking the units. So like stacking them so they're right on top of each other. Now, if you wanted to stagger them, uh, yeah, right. So in terms of the different configurations, so we've been looking at sort of um, a, a modified T shape, right? Like so. So some of you are talking about an I or a plus shaped, where you do something like this, where you go for that kind of a configuration. So now you guys are also talking about a staggered shape, which would be something like that, or you could do an offset stagger. Yeah. The only problem is, of course, is that you're really going to have to nail down, remember that 5'6" circle that you need for the stair um, to get yourself from one floor to the next. We've had some students who are like, can I put my stair outside? And we were like, um, I guess. So one student actually said, okay, they're going to break outside their box and they put in, so let me just show kind of the concept they came up with here. So what they did was they opened up the box on one end, and so you had the container, but then they also built this add-on pedestal to the container, and so the unit above staggered like so, and so they had the stair inside this container, which was like inside this glass box. So this part here, which I'll do in red, this was glassed. It was glassed in. So are you allowed to do which? Um, well, normally that would be kind of the goal. So here, this was they knocked this wall out, and they knocked this wall out. It's definitely possible. For me, this kind of takes away from um, the utility of these two things. But if this is kind of your design concept, I'm certainly not going to tell you not to do it. Um, so it's definitely possible. So in this case, what the builder would have to do is that they would have to build the rectangular concrete base for the lower container, and then this other piece here, so you could get access to the stair. So the final plan for this floor the final plan for this floor looked like this. Ah, the ink isn't drying for my sketches, so it's sticking to the paper. So here I'll just kind of lightly draw it in, and there's our glass and little dividers beside the glass. So this thing was all glazed in, and then we had our stair, and so you had this kind of this transparent, walled in, glazed in area where you could get access between the two containers. So imagination is important, and for you guys, um, yeah, there are constraints of budget, but sometimes you'll get into a situation where you've got a client and you show them something and they just love it so much. They're like, you know what? We had a budget of 300 grand. We were approved for that mortgage. We'll see if we can, add on a little bit more to the project budget, and because we really want to make this, we want to make this work. And with something like this, when you do a great design on something, not only can it add to your client's enjoyment of using the building, it also means that when they turn around to sell it, if they have to move, that the project can end up, standing out from the crowd because it's a unique building that, even when from a real estate perspective, it'll it's more likely to sell. So yes, that is definitely allowed, especially if you're trying to do an offset stagger like we're showing here. So let's just label these. So we've got our T-shaped here, we've got our X, and then you've got the what you call the aligned stagger. And then here you've got an offset stagger. And those are kind of the different methods of building these things. And so if you're just like looking at all this stuff and you're going, holy mackerel, what am I going to do? Just do what we've got. It's cool enough, but you're welcome to try some of these other shapes as well. Okay, that's all. So I'll end the stream here. I don't know how much of that you actually saw because I wasn't looking at my screen when I was putting this together. But there's our kind of different concepts there: the T shape, the X shape, the aligned stagger, offset stagger, and then with the offset stagger, if you need to break out of the box to get yourself someplace where the stair can connect to the upper unit, that's totally cool. So we're going to show those dashed lines to show the unit over on our ground floor plan. So looking in the background here at what I've got, I would put those dashed lines in for my outline of the second floor. Okay, I'll end the stream and I'll let you guys get at it.